David LaCroix is a former Scientologist who now actually practices Scientology independently out in the field. But he's very interesting because he started several years ago a website, Scientologypedia, to be a repository for biographies of people in Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard, Janis's mother, Yvonne Gillum Jantz, and also to be a repository for the L. Ron Hubbard lectures and films and policies and technical bulletins and all that, and make them readily available to people on the internet. These aren't stored underground on titanium plates or anything like that, like the boondoggle that David Miscavige is doing. These are actually available on the World Wide Web, and you can actually see the original documents, the original lectures before they were edited or changed by David Miscavige years later. So anyway, we had an interesting discussion with him about how he got involved in Scientology, why he set up this website, and how you can access it. And then we got into subjects as, different as remote viewing. So stay tuned for that. We have a short discussion on that, and hopefully in the future we'll do a new video in depth about remote viewing. Anyway, we hope you enjoy our interview with David LaCroix. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our channel, Scientology Peeling the Onion. My name is Mark Fisher. I'm here with Janis Gillum Grady. How you doing, Janis?
G'day, everybody. Hi, Mark. I'm doing good. Life is good. How are you?
Okay. Everything's fine. Everything's good. We're into the new year and rolling forward. And we've got a good show here for everybody today. Why don't you go ahead and talk about our guest?
We actually have a lot of good lineup for this new year, but he's a very interesting person. I met him some years ago where he actually interviewed me on his channel, and he's the creator of Scientolopedia, where they did, and he with some other people have done biographies of various Scientologists and stuff like that. So it's very interesting and gives a lot of history on Scientology, including one that was done on my mother. And anyway, our guest is David LaCroix, who was I believe he was the founder. Is that right, David?
Yeah, I created it.
Yeah. Yeah, so he interviewed me, and that's how I met him and knew of him.
How you doing, Dave?
I'm doing good. Nice to meet you, Mark. I don't think we've ever met before, but
no, we haven't. Tell everybody about your Scientologypedia. How did that come about, and what is it?
Well, it's a very large website that I created because there was nobody that filled the space of really promoting the good story of Scientology. In other words, at the time, actually 14, we're in our 15th year. But back then it was all, the chaos of the church and Miscavige this and church that. And anyway, I decided to just focus on a better story of Scientology, you could say, the great people, the history, the founder, and the technology of Scientology is really a big story, and it's a good story. Contrary to what, somebody just coming along and Google searching Scientology, they're going to get a very skewed idea of what Scientology is. But so Scientolopedia, I coined that phrase because people know Wikipedia and so forth. It uses the same software that Wikipedia uses. Actually, some extra technology that I won't go into, but it does some things that Wikipedia can't do. And it's a unique site. It's got, I can go into more detail. I don't want to go on and on here, but it's a big website that's a very sophisticated technology. It took a lot of work to put together.
Right.
Great. Now you're an independent Scientologist now, correct? Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then when did you get into Scientology? Why don't you tell a story about that, and how long were you in?
Yeah, it was back in 1971. I figured you'd ask me about, it used to be kind of like a running joke. What's your getting into Scientology story,
Yeah.
And everybody has their story, and most of them are kind of boring because they're the same thing. But I was thinking about it the other day that mine actually started before I got into Scientology. There was the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And you might not think that had anything to do with Scientology, but 2 days after he was assassinated, they sent a hitman, and a so-called assassin was assassinated. That was a wake-up call for me. That was like my red pill moment, that term these days, getting red pills.
Mm-hmm.
And I was 14 years old, and I went, wow, the world is not what I've been told to believe it was. Mom and dad, and back then they had these TV shows, the perfect family units and everything.
Yeah, Leave It to Beaver.
That's what I thought.
Ozzy and Harriet. Yeah.
And so that was like, oh my, something's going on here, and that wasn't right. And then a few years later, of course, the Vietnam War is raging, and I'm in high school, and they're inviting me to go fight in the swamps of Vietnam. And I'm like thinking, no, that thing is I saw through it, in other words. My eyes were open.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
now I'm in college, and I'm staying out of going to Vietnam, and I read Dianetics. And, this rebel spirit that sort of was growing, I saw this is a revolutionary concept of how to help mankind, how to, change this crazy trajectory of the world, in other words. So you could say my orientation was the fourth dynamic orientation, as well as the first dynamic survival impulse to not go to Vietnam. But I went down to Detroit. I was going to college about 150 miles from Detroit. I went to Detroit, went into the org, joined staff, been a Scientologist ever since. That was like 54
Well,
years.
let me ask you, how did you avoid Vietnam being drafted? Did you not get drafted, or because you're in college you didn't have to go, or what?
Well, I had my passport. I was ready to go to Canada and not get drafted if necessary. But they came out with this thing, a lot of people heard of, the draft. They had a draft where your birthday was pick number one, you were getting drafted. So 1 through
It's like a
about
lottery.
200
It's a lottery.
days of the year, you were getting drafted. And mine, I can say I won the lottery this lifetime because mine was 364.
Oh, wow.
So there was no way I was going to get drafted. So
No.
I was, I didn't have to worry about that anymore.
Okay.
And, they got rid of
I know younger people who became ministers in order to get out of the draft.
Yeah. Yeah, there was no way in hell I was going to Vietnam or going in the Army at that point in time. And since then, we've seen a lot of, the same pattern over and over again. If you want to go into Iraq and, all the wars, the United States has just been a constant war machine ever since. So, like I said, my eyes were open way back in '63.
Right.
So I've been a rebel ever since. And I think that Scientology is a revolutionary activity, even though LRA says it was a evolutionary, not a revolutionary. But, when you go in, and I used to jokingly, after '03, or during '03, somebody asked, how was it? I said, well, more bad news. Because if you look at Dianetics, he gives you this roadmap of how to help people and how to, improve conditions of life and so forth. But it's really bad news. It's like it shows you how messed up people are and how much, help they need. And likewise, all the steps in the bridge, they're very therapeutic and very good. But, the bad news is you're really messed up, brother. So, but you've got a way to fix it if you do things the right way. So anyway, kind of got off on a track there, but I got in 71, then went to California a year later. So I was at Celebrity Center in Los Angeles, met your mother.
Yep.
She was running it, and a bunch of other people, some that you probably know, or most of them you probably know.
Were you actually working at Celebrity Center, or you were public at Celebrity Center?
I was public. I was a student on course. That's another thing, with Scientolopedia, I try to, it's a very ugly situation with all the people that were harmed and have losses and upset, getting kicked out of the church, or their experiences in the Sea Org. So how do you, come up with something that can help handle that, what we call the third dynamic enneagram, a group sort of trauma. And one of those ways is with Scientolopedia, by telling the biographies, like the biography of your mother, I think was very therapeutic for the field. A lot of people read that, for the first time, stuff they never knew.
Right.
Go,
Yeah.
wow, this was, these aren't a bunch of whacked out cultist, crazy people, There's some really good people and some really fun times that were had.
Yeah.
So that's what those biographies do. They're a way of handling, because maybe in a minute I'll talk about my experience as a disseminator, but your mother was probably the world-class disseminator of all time. She was a master at, there's nobody that ever said a bad word about her. Everybody loved her, and she just, was,
Yeah. And I would like to say, I think Howard Dickman did an incredible job with that biography. He really put a lot of research into it and did a very good job with it.
He did, yeah. I worked with him very closely. I taught him how to use the software and edited the whole biography myself. But Howard did the heavy lifting as far as digging up all the data and writing it and so forth. So
yeah.
It was a collaboration, and, thousands of people have read that biography. It's probably the most popular page on the whole site. So anybody watching this that hasn't read the biography of Yvonne Gilliam Gents needs to go watch that, or read it rather.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're going to put a link to your Scientologypedia in the description down below. So anybody watching right now, just go into the description after watching the video, click on it, and you can go right to your website, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Yeah, it's and the other thing, we started off talking about the website, but it does a number of things besides the biographies. There's a resource for all the materials of Scientology are on there. And we've probably distributed, LRH, probably there's something 500, 600, 700 lectures. I don't know the exact number. But we've distributed around the world for free, probably about a dozen terabytes of LRH lectures. In other words, people can download his lecture sets from the briefing course, all the briefing course lectures on up.
Let me ask you, these lectures that you have, are these before Miscavige got his hands on them and got them all edited?
Yeah.
So are these originals that Miscavige hasn't edited?
Yep. As far as I know,
okay.
I mean, there's, I can't say it 100% certainty. As far as I know, yes.
Right. Well, is there a mention of Mary Sue in any of them?
Yeah, we talked about Susie. I've got some of the ones like RJ67, RJ68.
Okay, because Miscavige edited Mary Sue, any mention of Mary Sue or Susie out of it. Yeah. So if they're in there, all right, some people will probably like to listen to those.
Now we've got a Clearing Congress film too, where he has nibs, come in and take the books off and so forth.
Oh yeah.
I'm sure Miscavige gets edited out. So it's a huge project, though. I mean, we need at some point, when there's the manpower and the time and the finances to get the materials done right, that would be a nice project. But so there's gaps. There's probably things that are missing. There's later some that the seal just hasn't released and they haven't been liberated yet.
What about like the technical volumes or the OEC volumes or anything like that?
Yeah, all the materials, all the courses. You could start Scientology from scratch with all of our materials. All the tech volumes, all the OECs, dictionaries, courses. You can train up to grad 5. Actually, if you want to. You can
And these materials, they're not stored on titanium plates in a, underground vault somewhere.
No, they're digital.
You know why I'm saying that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to start off by saying, you can see my background. We're coming to you live from Golden Era Scientolopedia Studios.
Okay.
Oh
gosh.
dear.
And this stuff is basically on the web, right? It's in the cloud or on the internet or whatever. As people can access this stuff. Is that right?
Yeah, it's right in one site. That was one of the key ideas behind the software that I used and the whole design of the website is that you've got these biographies of people, you've got all these materials, we've got lists of auditors in the field who you can go to for getting services, and we've got a very extensive biography of L. Ron Hubbard.
Well, I heard that the orgs don't even have the tech vols anymore because they're being revised, and so everyone was ordered to get rid of those. So if anyone from a org is watching and you want to get a real reference, go to Scientologypedia so that you can look up the correct references that haven't been altered or made to disappear.
Yeah. It's a tragedy what's going on there. They don't. Nobody's on the briefing course. Nobody's on the class. They're not making class 8.
Right.
And I have a theory about that, which if you want to hear something really wild and interesting.
Sure.
Okay. Well, my story, I got myself to California, and I'm at Celebrity Center, and then I get invited to help out on some projects, and these were for the Guardian's office. So I worked on a couple projects for the Guardian's office, and then I had a girlfriend who, I don't know if you ever hear of Barbara Code.
Sounds familiar.
You probably heard of Keith Code. He was a motorcycle racer.
Yes, I knew.
Keith Code. I know Keith Code. Yeah.
His ex-wife. Anyway, she was my girlfriend. She was Henning Helt's communicator. Henning Helt was DG US. Deputy Guardian US.
Deputy, yep.
Communicator. Through her, she had a friend who was married to a guy named Pat Price. Does that ring any bells?
Yeah, from the he and boy, I've gone blank on that one. They do the
Ingo Swann.
Ingo Swann, that's who I'm trying to think of.
Yeah. So one of my questions I was going to have
remote viewing, right? Yeah.
Yeah, remote viewing.
I was going to ask you if either Ingo Swann or Pat Price, any of those guys came across your traffic, if there were any red flags about them or
I heard about Pat and Ingo through my mother. My mother used to send me cassettes when I was on the ship. Sometimes she'd write a letter or she'd dictate it, and Sally Shaliff would, type it up. And then sometimes she would send me a cassette. She got me a cassette player for, I think, my 14th birthday. And so she would send me cassettes and I'd listen to her. And she talked about Ingo Swann and Pat doing the remote viewing.
Yeah.
And that's how I heard about them.
Yeah. Well, Ingo Swann and another Scientologist named Hal Puthoff, and a third guy who's not a Scientologist, Russell Targ, created the remote viewing project up at Stanford Research Institute. I won't go into a long thing about that. Anybody on the web or that's been into remote viewing, it's very famous. Most extensive research into the psychic capabilities ever done, scientific research. Pat Price was the superstar of all time remote viewers. And he was like a mentor to me. He actually took me up to Stanford, and we gave me a tour of the remote viewing, lab that they had. They had these Faraday cases or cages where people would, the remote viewer would be inside this cage that no electronic signals could get into. Was part of the experiment, so that they could.
Dave, can you explain for our viewers what remote viewing is?
Well, the phrase that was coined by Ingo Swann, and the idea was to test, individuals for psychic phenomena and see if they could replicate things that were greater than the, flipping a coin. In other words, could they find somebody, name somebody, or spot somebody outside of the building or in a remote place and tell where they were, and they would describe things about them, and then they'd compare notes and find out how accurate they were.
So basically, it's like look in the other room, but you're sitting in this room, and who's in there and what are they wearing? It's like not physically being there, but still psychically being able to tell what's going on. Is that right?
Yeah, it's really, and this is where, it's really exteriorization capabilities and perceptions. Remote viewing is a misnomer, and this is where, a lot of people don't understand really how it's supposed to work. But viewing is only one aspect. As you know, LRH defined or listed 53 perceptics. So there's a whole bunch of perceptions that people can have, and they don't know where they come from. They might get the feeling that somebody's going to call, and then they call. These kind of psychic abilities, and so they were put through very scientific, rigorous testing. That whole project was funded by the CIA.
Right.
Part of the story of Scientology is this parallel track between what the CIA and the sort of the bad hats were trying to do with, brainwashing, creating Manchurian candidates and that sort of thing, while L. Ron Hubbard was writing a book about how to free people up and release people from the traumas in their mental traumas and so forth. So you got one side over here that's trying to figure out how to really entrap people and control them and control populations, whereas L. Ron Hubbard was coming up with things that are to better mankind, make them more able, make them think, talk, work, happier, that sort of thing. So
yeah, and so for Dave, I'm sorry, Dave, just to interrupt for 1 second, just for our viewers out there. This type of stuff still goes on with the government. I mean, if you think about COVID, okay, that lab in Wuhan, China or whatever, they were doing what was called gain of function for this virus. In other words, they were trying to make it so that it was easily transferable to people. And they're doing this research funded by the government. Okay. Why are they doing that? Biological weapons, you name it, who knows? But, this stuff does go on with the government, the secret CIA and all these different programs and stuff. So don't believe that it doesn't go on. It definitely does.
Well, Russell Tagg, you mentioned him. He's still alive.
Yeah, and I did it. Sorry.
No, well, I contacted him a couple of years ago to try and get some stories from him if he ever met my mother and, her working with Pat and Ingo. And he basically poo-pah'd me and said, never heard of her. So.
Well, I talked to him about that. I did an interview with him. I've got it on my channel. And I put forward a theory as to why Scientology had to be undermined and taken out, which is my theory. But he agreed with me. So, Russell is still alive, and he's a good guy. He's not a Scientologist, but he has a sort of an understanding of dynamics. He loved Pat Price, and he made a movie. What the heck? I'm drawing a blank on the name of the movie. Third Eye Spies is a film that he did. It was a documentary about remote viewing experiments at Stanford Research Institute.
Yeah, because that's what they were. They were third eye spies.
Yeah.
Good title.
Well, Pat got into trouble because later he was working for the CIA, and they figured that he was reporting to Henning Helt and on a line to Mary Sue, which you can imagine the CIA didn't appreciate that too much. So my theory is that he was, it was listed as accidental or natural causes, but he was killed in '75 in Las Vegas. Oddly enough, Las Vegas.
Yeah, I heard it was questionable about how he died.
But he was dabbling in him and Engel had gone into, sort of stumbled upon an NSA safe house or safe space on the East Coast, went in, extracted some code names for projects that were top secret, and came out with them by remote viewing.
Let's get back to, you were talking about why there's no briefing course or class 8 course and all that, and we got off onto this other tangent.
I'm interested.
Well, no, I understand, but I'm just like, let's pull it back into Scientology and the black materials and things like that.
Well, yeah, the tragedy of the materials not being available in the church, and the courses, they're not making class 6s, class 8s. Probably, I'm sure they're not making class 12s, although they're probably still selling L's because that's their cash cow. But we put the materials out there, and that's been a huge dissemination effort done by a handful of people. And I'll have to say, take some credit for my genius in putting them all in one place, because part of my story is I was a professional FSM for about a dozen years, field staff member, working with people to get them up the creek. I was also what they call a power FSM. I was even also a lead FSM. That's at a CC gala there with my daughter in I think 2001 or 2, I forget. So I was very attuned to what the public was thinking and what they wanted and why they were not doing their bridge and so forth. And this was from the late 80s to the early 2000s. But there was a lot of very, odd things, schizophrenic things, you could say, in the church that put me off from FSMing. So I got out of that and went back into business. But I was a very good FSM, one of the top in the world. I was AO's lead FSM or top FSM for a lot of years, and I toured with AOA and was a speaker. Can
you explain to our viewers what is a field staff member and what are you actually doing as that?
Field staff member is somebody who's not contracted to the church or the orgs, but works on a commission basis. In other words, gets a 10% or 15% commission for services that somebody that you select to go to the org, what they would pay. So it's not a very people think, oh, what a scam that must be. Well, I'll tell you what. Long hours, nights and weekends and travel. And I think the most I ever made as an FSM was $40,000 in 1 year. So try to put a kid through a private school and live in Los Angeles on that. But anyway, it was very rewarding, very spiritually remunerative because, the lessons I got in how to help people, how to work with people, what's really going on with them are, immeasurable. And I got to work with a lot of Sea Org people. Now, I'm not a fan of the Sea Org, I'll say that. I think it needs to be disbanded. But you know, a lot of the people in the service orgs, the staff in the service orgs, those people, the auditors, CSs, regular staff, they're wonderful people. And also, you know, the staff of other outer orgs and so forth, I got to know and work with. In fact, if I could just digress in my Scientology history, the other day, somebody said something that gave me what we call a cognition, right? My adult life, I've been surrounded by people with a real sincere purpose to fix the world and, you know, do better in the world or to help people, like all the staff at orgs and so forth. And I kind of took it for granted. But, you know, getting older, you start to reminisce and look back and appreciate some things more than you did maybe when you're younger. These are great people. You know, they are not the type that are out for a buck. You know, they're working their ass off to help mankind, and that's my kind of people.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Now, you know, we recently did some videos with Bruce Hines. You know, and we talked about the golden age of tech, which was when David Miscavige changed the definition of a floating needle to the point where, you know, people were getting overrun on processes left and right because they'd be sent to ethics if they called a floating needle for the person when they were done with something, when it didn't meet the exact definition that David Miscavige dreamed up himself. As a matter of fact, it was actually created electronically. It wasn't actually recorded from an actual person. We got the person who actually created it. He commented on that. So it's just another way of, you know, cutting the technology and making it so that it was not as useful as it was before. So, you know, something like you've got with all these materials, like Jana said, Miscavige he's editing out things and all that, and nobody has any reliability in terms of what used to work in terms of what they're using now. And so your Scientologypedia can be a resource for people that want to learn about that stuff.
Yeah, that was one of the big red flags when I say the Church was schizophrenic. That was in '96 when the Golden Age of Tech came out. That was the start of my slow, you know, under the radar, slow exit. I better start looking around for some other means of occupation, you know, type of thing. And so it took another few years, but yeah, Golden Age of Tech was a catastrophe, a disaster. One of the things, I got a whole list of things I do, put me in charge, and that would be on the list of things to revert back to the old way of training, because, you know, it's just nonsense what they do, the drills and so forth. But want to hear more about things I would change?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say, yeah, no, I mean, this is for people, you know, that are out there practicing Scientology that, you know, still believe in what Hubbard's, you know, created and what he did and all that sort of thing. That we have a lot of viewers, though, who are never involved in Scientology, and they think it's destructive and, you know, a destructive cult and harmful and that type of thing. So we're just trying to give, you know, both sides and give, you know, a voice to this side as well so that people can learn more about it. Because like you said, your side is about the history, where ours is too. We're trying to get people's stories out there and let the viewers decide for themselves.
Yeah. It's amazing that I get, like I just finished somebody up. I brought him up from nothing, right? Well, he's done a little bit of book one, Diane. But I brought him up through the grades, Ned, and did full purpose rundown, and now he's on the solo course, so he's going to learn how to audit and do the OT levels. And never been in an org, never done anything in an org. So, and what he's paid me for my services is a fraction of what the orgs charge. So it's very doable these days. Somebody wants to, now you've got to be, you know, very determined that you want to do it, because it's not easy. Just because there's nobody there to sort of, you know, shepherd you through all the way, like in an org, you know, where you have to show up for a certain class at a certain time and more structured, but it can be done. So people.
So it's more like DIY, do it yourself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So David, you have your own Scientology independent practice right now?
Well, I audit. I don't take on very many PCs. I'm getting older and I don't want to work very hard. But I have, a few PCs,
Right.
and I don't have a center, so I can't advertise a course room. But that's about it. I do audit.
Right. So you audit what? The basic Scientology, or you audit the whole bridge?
Well, I can do up through the OT levels because, but of late it's mostly the lower bridge, like grades, and I just, like I said, finish somebody up on NED. That's the first time I've done that, a complete NED program in 50 years. But
Right.
uh,
And you have someone who does the case supervising for you and reads all your PC folders?
well, in this case, I just CS myself.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. And like my pastry said, he noticed that I hadn't had to run any correction lists on him, and he said, I noticed we didn't do any correction lists. I said, yeah, when you don't make any mistakes or you're really like good, and if you're really in calm with your PC, you handle anything, they just don't go on by and build up. So,
Right. So now you mentioned before we came on camera and recorded, you mentioned you'd done all the way up through OT 48, which indicates to me that you're part of the Ron's org, because they have Captain Bill's OT levels that picked up, I guess, from after OT 8, it picked up with stuff that Captain Bill put together.
yeah, I haven't actually done through 48. I did the beginning parts of Captain Bill's Bridge. And then I got to the point where it seemed silly to be trying to track these different numbers and assign a number to it. There's unlimited potential for exploration when you get to that point. And so I just, probably a couple of years ago, stopped trying to keep track of what number I was on.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Now, do you solo audit those levels? Do you do solo auditing on those levels?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me ask you a question, okay? Because a lot of people are, listening to this and they're going like, why are they doing this? This is crazy. I mean, let me ask you, because you're Scientologypedia, your site there, right? You say you have biographies. You've got a detailed one of Yvonne and all that. You say you have one of L. Ron Hubbard. Now, do you have all of the information about Hubbard, even if it's derogatory, and some of the falsehoods about his biography that he used to promote? Do you clarify that, or what do you actually do with that?
What I did for Scientolopedia was, rather than a straight, somebody writing a biography like Vaughn Young or something, I took a bunch of different testimonials or stories. What did I call it? I forget now. I just lost the word. But a collection of the stories of people that knew L. Ron Hubbard and sort of put it together. And it's still evolving. It's still growing. And let that be the biography rather than
I understand.
Try to do a timeline.
Right.
This is when he was 12 and when he was 25 or whatever.
Yeah, no, I understand. Have you read any of the other biographies, like Russell Miller's Barefaced Messiah, Bent Corridan's book that Nibs was interviewed in, things like that?
Yeah, I've heard it all. I understand. People say that he was the Jack Parsons and, all that.
Aleister Crowley and all that.
Aleister Crowley. My connection with L. Ron Hubbard was through his writing and his books. And, I know he wasn't perfect. I know that Janis has things that she knows about him personally. I don't care, because the tech works. You could sit down with somebody. If you knew somebody that was suffering from PTSD, was contemplating suicide, the best thing you could possibly do is be a book one auditor and take them through some incidents and give them some relief. So we've got a very damaged, hurting world and people that are hurting, and they need the technology. And I don't give a crap if L. Ron Hubbard's, had 5 wives, 3 wives, 2 wives. I don't care. It don't matter. He wasn't perfect, and he made mistakes, and things. And there's a lot of those kind of, illogical things going on. Like people talk about it as a cult. It's a cult. It's a cult, Well, most people are in a cult. I mean, they'll go out, and then after they talk about Scientology as a cult, they'll go out and talk about climate change. And they'll, or they'll go stand in line at a Apple store waiting for the next iPhone release,
Right.
And
Well, and it also gets into religion too. I mean, look, a lot of religion, it's all faith based. You know what I mean? Nobody knows really for sure that there's a heaven or a hell or whatever that your religious beliefs are. They don't know it for fact because nobody's ever come back from there and say, here's how it is. You know what I mean? Hubbard says this is what's going to happen. We don't really know until we're gone. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of faith based aspect to Scientology and to Hubbard and what he believed. But it's the same in other religions too. They all have this. It's just a question of, are you helping? I mean, what is the basic core? Are you meant there to help people or are you meant there to hurt people? And then the other aspect of it is Miscavige, the Sea Org, the OSA, the people like that, the Guardian's Office, they got into harming people. And that wasn't what the basic tenets were. That's why we didn't get involved in Scientology for that reason. We weren't there to hurt people,
Yeah. By the way, I have a little treat or surprise for you, an OT demonstration or OT story, you could say. So when we got about 5 minutes left,
Okay.
lay that on you. Just give me a heads up when we've got about.
Okay, no, we've got another 10 minutes or so we can carry on. What is your goal then with the Scientologypedia and what you're doing? Are you trying to save it for because we're all getting older? Are you trying to save it for future generations or what's the plan?
It's much bigger than just a curation of the materials and so forth. It's a hub for I'm going to use a term here. I might have to clear it with you, but the Scientology diaspora. Ever heard the term diaspora?
No.
Diaspora? Okay, diaspora is like I could actually give you, but just the simplicity is the population that's scattered around the world. Like you say, the Chinese in San Francisco, they're part of the Chinese diaspora. Or the Jews, when they're scattered around the world, the Jewish diaspora. We've got the Scientology diaspora, where the central core or the hub is gone or not available, yet we're scattered all around the world. It's just a sort of a metaphor that I came up with. But Scientolopedia, the field, the diaspora, doesn't have any anchor point, any point to grab onto, no place to central hub to communicate from. I did a eval, which aren't being done anymore these days. But I did an eval, and part of the why, or the main why, was the lack of leadership. There's no leadership for people that are interested in Scientology to come to, no channel for them to get on, a place for them to go. There's a lot of these pockets. There's the guys in Switzerland, the guys in the Ruskies are going crazy. They're loving Scientology in Russia. South Africa, South America, all over the world, but there's nothing unifying. And so if I could get some more people interested in that sort of thing, that we could put together some technology, use Scientolopedia maybe as a hub for communication and for routing people onto services. That would be my vision, is that, because see, I don't think the church will ever have the authority to, in other words, people will never bow down to the church again. They'll never, even after the church is gone. Whatever happens with Scientology, so I hope it reforms, and I hope that it becomes a place where people can go into and train. But I'll never, take orders or,
Yeah, it's Scientology's become a real estate empire led by David
Yeah.
Miscavige, you know, and like what Hubbard used to say was an org is not the building. The org is made of people, and they don't have people in there anymore. They're empty, you know. Have you experienced any of that? Have you been around to any of the quote unquote ideal organizations around?
Oh yeah. I mean, not recently, but I know they're empty and
Yeah.
they're dead. But again, there's a number of things that could be done that would turn that around real fast if they did them. By the way, because you're interested, your mother was intimately interested in Celebrity Center. She founded Celebrity Center. I'll
Yeah.
just put this out there. This will drive some people crazy, but I think it should be changed from Celebrity Center to Scientology Center for the Arts. Because I think the cult of celebrity is just, not something that Scientology should promote and be part of. But a Center for the Arts with Scientology base would be a thing. So I just tossed that out there because you reminded me of Celebrity Center because of your connection with your mother, obviously.
Yeah. And that's what they did. They had originally, it was a lot of artists and people wanting to, they did the poetry by candlelight. They did the theater players.
Yeah.
They had all sorts of different things. And these were nobodies who were coming in just wanting to be a part of the arts. They weren't celebrities of any sort. That became later when they created the opinion leaders.
Well, that's why I say it. I think it aligns more with your mother's purpose. She wanted an artistic venue, But
Right.
the thing was, I understand why LRH used the celebrities because he was desperate for getting recognition and validation as a church. We weren't even recognized as a legitimate church back then. So by getting celebrities to endorse it was a way of making it more bona fide,
Right.
But we don't need that now, or wouldn't need it. Just, have a center for the arts. Anyway.
Now, Dave, has Scientology or OSA, or have they fair gamed you or come after you in any way, shape, or form?
They've run in on me a few times. They shut down my site for once back. Now, this has been, I don't know, it's been 7 or 8 years ago. They shut me down on what's called a DMCA violation, Digital Millennia Copyright Act. So they got me thrown off of my my ISP, the web hosting service. I quickly challenged that, got back up and running, and then I moved the site outside the grimy fingers of the U.S. of A. So,
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Now,
And
I
they
have
run
a
in
question.
Mm.
Go ahead. Finish what you're
I
saying.
said, they run in also guys. They contact me, they call me up, or they email me in a very friendly manner. I can see right through them that they're trying to get data or whatever.
Now,
So, Dave, if you want to tell that, what is the OT story you wanted to tell? Now would be a good time to do it, and then we'll end off.
Okay. Well, I started after doing OT 3 and 4. Something interesting happened. I did the OT doctorate course, which is based on the book Scientology 880 OA. It's a famous course, very OT course, very basic LRH lectures on what OT is. And I helped my wife was pregnant. So I helped her sort out who was going to win that body because there's a contest going on, sort of a struggle, tug and pull.
yeah, you can feel it as a woman. You can feel that tug and pull.
Yeah. So I helped sort it out because I wanted somebody that was a cool state, right? Fast forward 20 years, and after doing a bunch of other OT levels and so forth, I became this sort of default guy that when people died, they'd come to. Like when my mother died was the first one in '98. And I helped her sort of get oriented and settled in and figure out what's going on and just give her sort of what's what. Then it's happened a few other times. I've had a brother and a father and people close to me that have died. More recently, a good friend of mine that lived here in Tennessee, he died. And it was all of a sudden, it was a heart attack, just out of nowhere. And boom, he was gone. So I was his auditor. So, when you audit, OT auditing, you're holding the cans, but you're taking reads on the meter off of the being that you're auditing, right? Does that make sense?
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a stretch that after my friend had died, I gave him a couple of sessions. The first session was just like a basic rudiments, ARC break, the upset of dying, surprise and loss of his family and all of his stuff. He was in the middle of a bunch of projects and so forth. So he had a loss from that. And the first session kind of handled that. It was very relieved and we had a good laugh, And a lot of people, your listeners this might not be real, that a disembodied or a person that has recently died could get an auditing session and, get benefit from it, and it would show up on the meter. But believe it or not, that's what happened.
Right.
So then the next day I gave him a session, and I gave him the three rights of a being. Let's see, where are they? Can I read them down? Yeah, the rights of a being, which you might not know yourself, but these were what really sent him off. And since I gave him these three rights, I've been in calm with him a bit, but no more sessions. Didn't need any more sessions. He was handled. You want to hear the three rights of a being?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So the first right is you have the right to leave a game. And that indicated to him tremendously, because he had just left the game and he felt bad about it. He felt like he couldn't leave because he owed, he had a duty to his family and all this struggle. And so telling him that he had the right to leave a game gave him just a massive release, a lot of big blowdown on the meter. In other words, big reaction on the meter. The second right is you have the right to mock up or join or not any game you wish. In other words, you have the right to mock up or join or not any game you choose.
Right.
So they gave him the freedom to do whatever. Okay, now I can look around, do whatever, think about different things. And then the third right is you have the right to your own sanity. And that also gave him a big reaction on the meter, because, people think they're starting to go crazy. They're thinking of all these things, worrying about it, they're going crazy. Anyway, that all resolved. So I thought that'd be a good, interesting story for your people to share, that, in fact, you can audit. Don't give up. If you don't make it this lifetime, even after you're dead, you can get case game. But that was kind of funny. But anyway, so may not be real to some people, but it was something I felt good about, because he was a good friend, very interesting guy, and it's been a loss for me to have him just disappear all of a sudden like that. But again, we connected, and I helped him out even after he dropped his body.
That's good.
Yeah,
That's a
very
story.
good.
So, Dave, can you tell everybody where they can, find Scientolopedia? I can't pronounce it. I messed it up, I'm sure.
Yeah, real easy. Google search Scientolopedia. It'll come up first thing on the list. It's with an I, just like it's spelled up there behind me. Scientolopedia.
Yeah, Scientology instead of Scientology. It's Ipedia.
Yeah.
And I'll put a link. I'll put a link in the description of the video down below. So if anybody's interested in at least checking out your site, and that's where they can, if they want to, they can access materials and the lectures that you talked about and things like that.
Yep. Free downloads of all the books and materials, and lots of information, biographies, and so forth. If I could, okay. Mark, could I send you another link? I have a podcast channel, and there's one called Flipping the Script, where we didn't have time to go into it, but there's a whole issue about this narrative about Scientology and L. Ron Hubbard versus the narrative of how evil it all is, and the MK Ultra and all the CIA stuff versus the true story. So I go into that quite extensively. It's called Flipping the Script. And if I could send you that link, I'd appreciate it.
Send it to me and I'll put it in the description as well.
Okay.
Okay. All
Well,
right. So
good.
I just wanted, this has been an interesting show. I just wanted to ask everybody, but please subscribe to our channel, hit that like button, hit the notification button. If you've got any questions or comments about what we talked about here with Dave, please go down in the comment section. And if we have questions, we'll get them to Dave and we'll get them answered for you. And then if you'd like to support our channel, also in the description, there's a link to buy me a coffee, and you just click on that and you can send any support our way. We greatly appreciate it. And then, of course, go to our merchandise site. You can buy Janis's books, autographed, and also other merchandise, hats, T-shirts, all that jazz. And there down below, you'll see the product links at the bottom of this video. Janis, have you got anything else you want to say before we end the video off here?
I just want to remind people to rock slam the like button.
Okay.
That's a good one. I like that.
Okay, Dave. Thank you for being here. We want to thank everybody for watching. Until next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Dave.
Bye,
Bye.
guys.